G'day, I'm ZiggyD, and recently I played Fallout 76 for 3 hours. Based on my experiences, I'm going to answer some of your most asked questions about the game. Firstly though, it's important to disclose that Bethesda paid for my flights, accommodation, and food for this media event, and such treatment has the potential to colour opinions, so bear that in mind whenever you watch content like this. Now, interestingly enough, Bethesda placed no real restrictions on what we could record and do in-game in our 3 hours of play. We were grouped up with a Bethesda staff member who could guide us and answer questions, but we were free to go off on our own whenever we wanted. Unrestricted recording freedom like this is pretty rare from media events, and I think it shows a great confidence from Bethesda in Fallout 76. During my session, I spent a couple of hours with my party of 4 exploring, doing some quests and events, capturing a workshop, engaging in some PvP, and eventually setting off for a bit of solo exploration. I learned a bunch about how the game plays and got a good sense for what Bethesda is aiming for. So, on that note, let's answer some of your most asked questions about Fallout 76. Does Fallout 76 feel empty? Since Bethesda has stated the map would be 4 times larger than that of Fallout 4's, the question of just how dense this game is has come up a lot. Set in the Appalachians of West Virginia, it's a far cry from what is usually called the Wasteland in other Fallout titles. Being a low priority target, this area was not directly nuked, and while the effects of nukes everywhere else are prominent, the world you explore in Fallout 76 is absolutely lush with green grass, plants, and trees. Environmentally speaking, this game is the most densely vegetated by far, and it's easy to lose yourself in some nature hiking. The game is also extremely mountainous and rugged. You'll be taking winding paths or climbing hills and scaling mountains during your exploration. The result is that I found it very easy to get lost, and in doing so, immerse myself in the environment and exploration. Getting lost when you have nowhere that you need to be is awesome. On top of that, the game seems to be ripe with points of interest, both clearly marked and hidden away in the woods and mountains. Climbing up to a high vantage point to look out amongst the mountain tops and see landmarks break through the vegetation is quite a stirring experience, and there's a strong desire instilled in you to set out towards the things you see. There seems to be a bit more space between points of interest, so although the map may be 4 times larger, I doubt there is 4 times as many places to explore in total. But from speaking with the developers, this seems to be by design, as it makes discovering something amongst this mess of mountains and trees more meaningful. And I certainly noticed that the spaces between specific points of interest are far more interesting than the barren areas in previous Fallout titles. Overall, the game did not feel empty to me. In fact, quite the opposite. This might be the most dense Fallout title yet. And I think that makes sense. Bethesda is clearly aiming for an online title here that'll have a lot of longevity, and for that they need a lot of things for us to look at. So are there really no NPCs? This topic of discussion has been one of the most heated, and has also had a fair bit of confusion surrounding it. There are apparently no human NPCs to talk to in the game. I certainly didn't see any. But that doesn't mean that there is no story, quests, or lore in the game. Now, arguably, Bethesda's weakest aspect to their recent games has been their NPC storytelling, while their environmental storytelling and world building has been quite strong in my opinion. Fallout 76 has done away with the chatting to human NPCs side of things, and instead played to their strengths. The fact that the humans have all disappeared actually seems to be a major part of the story. You learn about the people that came before through notes, terminal logs, holodisks, and environmental storytelling. Perhaps we'll even learn what happened to everyone and why there is no one else in West Virginia. Personally, I love this. Environmental storytelling has always been one of my favourite methods, and this seems to be a focus for Fallout 76. That said, there are non-human NPCs in the game. In particular, I encountered a few robots that would give quests, say a few things, or trade with players. And the game does have a main quest line, side quests, and world events, which all have their own stories to them. So ultimately, yeah, Fallout 76 doesn't have human NPCs, and the main questline doesn't seem to be the focus point of the game. but it's definitely not going to be devoid of story, lore, and world building. What even is Fallout 76? So this has been a big question for me too personally, and with the initial announcement of the game, Bethesda was pretty tight-lipped about what sort of game it would actually be. Is the game a co-op RPG, a survival sandbox game, an MMO RPG? As an online game, and not the traditional single-player RPG that Fallout normally is, Fallout 76 has been a bit of a mystery. What I've learned is that Fallout 76 is forging a bit of a new path here. It's treading the line between a Bethesda RPG and a survival sandbox game, but it doesn't clearly fall into either category. Instead, it seems to be a sandbox of exploration, questing, scavenging, building, crafting, and goofing off with friends. The simplest answer I can come up with is that Fallout 76 is a multiplayer Fallout 4, with a lot less focus on main story, and a lot more focus on the world itself. If that's not enough of an answer for you guys, then I think you're really going to have to watch a bunch more footage or try the game for yourself to get a sense of it, because it feels to me pretty far removed from any genre I've played before. Will exploration be rewarding? With exploration being such a huge part of Fallout 76, it needs to be rewarding. In my opinion, the rewards for exploration can come in two areas: story or cool stuff to see, and good loot. Now, 3 hours was simply not enough time to assess whether exploration is sufficiently rewarding in terms of story and lore. But from what I saw, there are logs, notes, holodisks, human corpses, interesting environmental aspects, and important locations to discover. The other side of the exploration reward structure that I can speak to is loot. Now, when it comes to exploration, you can obtain loot in 3 ways: from enemies, from containers, and just scattered about the world. Enemies like ghouls and mutated wildlife or robots all drop gear, supplies, and resources for crafting. Some enemies will actually have a crown above their name, essentially a legendary or boss enemy, and these will drop a lot of loot with a chance at more rare or legendary gear. From what I saw, there is a decent or even guaranteed chance of one of these spawning at a point of interest, so exploring new areas and finding these boss enemies to kill will be a big draw, I think. Containers located about points of interest can have useful crafting junk, gear, or supplies. These are randomized, but different types of containers will give different loot. For example, a munitions box containing explosives. And finally, there are things to collect just scattered about the world as well, like in all Bethesda titles. Often it's going to be junk you can salvage for crafting supplies, but sometimes it's also weapons. Like for example this Bowie knife by Radstag Corpse, or even outfits like this ranger outfit on the ground in a lookout tower. Often these will make sense contextually based on where they are in the world. How does loot work in a multiplayer Fallout title? So following on from my last point, containers and loot on enemy corpses is all instanced. This means that each player can loot them and will find their own items, and they are often different to what other players got. Items scattered about the world are not instanced, however, and if someone else picks them up, you will not be able to. However, loot does respawn after an indeterminate amount of time. As far as I could tell, to get loot off an enemy, you need to be involved in the combat or in a party that kills the enemy, so you probably can't easily just leech off random other players. What are events? Similar to world events in many MMOs, these are timed quests that can occur all over the world of Fallout 76. Players will be notified of a nearby event and can see a marker on their maps of any nearby. While normal quests are only shared with your party members, events can be done collaboratively with other random players around the world. Collaboration on events seems to happen somewhat naturally, and players in the same area working on an event are considered to be allies for the duration. I had a chance during my gameplay to do 2 of these events. Now they were pretty low level, so rather simple, but I've been told they get more challenging and involved at higher levels. The first event was a pretty simple escort quest, helping out a damaged robot deliver a message. And the second event had us deal with farmhand robots that had gone crazy and started attacking everything. The second event had 2 parts, first putting down the farmhand supervisors, and second exploring a nearby building to locate a terminal so that we could change the farmhand targeting parameters. Again, rather simple intro level events, but I can see the potential for large scale multiplayer events, like the sort of things you might see in the Destiny games. Fighting waves of enemies, defending a location, dealing with some great beast and what have you. In terms of rewards, events grant experience, caps, and a somewhat randomized pool of item rewards, which can even include legendary gear. From what I saw, there is going to be a lot of these events, and I strongly suspect they'll be repeatable content. How does PvP work, and will this game be full of griefers? This was a pretty big one. A lot of people moving over from an exclusively single-player series over to an online game are rightfully concerned about such things. PvP in 76 is rather gentle. If someone attacks you, they'll do very little damage to you. Attacking someone in this game is more akin to asking them to duel. A player can accept the duel request by attacking the provoker back, at which point each player will be able to do full damage to the other, and true PvP begins. A small amount of caps is automatically wagered on the fight. You may also lose some junk, which are crafting resources, if you are carrying any when you die. You won't lose any other items or gear, and you can respawn almost immediately. I've played several online survival games like Rust before, and to be honest, they really can bring out the worst in people. Fun at the expense of others often becomes the end game for the very entrenched players of those games. However, players who live for griefing aren't likely to be too interested in Fallout 76. New players are exempt from PvP until level 5, which is a couple hours into gameplay, and which is just enough time to get your bearings essentially. And as mentioned, attacking someone deals only a little bit of damage unless they accept the challenge and fight back. If someone's attacking you and being annoying, and you don't want to fight back, then you can actually freely fast travel away as well. Furthermore, there is a pacifist mode you can enable which will prevent you from accidentally shooting someone and starting a fight that you didn't want. This counters the potential of someone, like say, running in front of your bullets and then shooting you back to engage PvP that you weren't ready for. Now, technically someone persistent could murder an unwilling player by just continually attacking them, dealing small amounts of damage until they die. There is no extra reward for murdering someone in this fashion. As one of the developers put it, you don't really need to incentivize such behavior. People will do it anyway if they so desire. And when someone kills an unwilling player like this, they are branded a murderer, and a bounty is placed on their head paid from their own supply of caps. They are then marked on the map and every single player can hunt them down for that bounty, even their own party members. It's kind of funny to think of groups of griefers turning on one another when bounties are placed on their head. And if someone really wants to be a jerk, and runs out of caps on a griefing, murdering spree, then they will instead be given a large debuff to their damage when they murder someone, which is essentially an enforced timeout. Basically, they get sat in the naughty corner for a while. The end result here is that I think the occasional murder will happen, and it'll be kind of fun, as there's no real loss to the normal players and everyone bands together to chase after the bounty. It becomes a bit of an event in itself. Based on the mechanics of this system and what I personally saw, Fallout 76 is no home to griefers. Real PvP in this game requires enthusiastic consent, which is always something you should seek before getting physical with others. If you're still unsure, then take a look at this example here. I try to troll this group of friendly players with mines. Instead, I end up blowing myself up, and they take very little damage at all. Then they proceed to humiliate me, and I go back to playing Rust. Can you play solo or treat this as a single player game? From what was mentioned, there won't be any way to truly play solo at launch, though there has been some talk of custom or private servers coming later. To begin with though, you're pretty much always going to be on a server that has other people on it exploring. But you're not forced to party up, and you will be able to do most things in the game solo. There is a Lone Wanderer perk to help with this by giving you more damage mitigation and action point regen while solo, but it's always going to be stronger having a well-coordinated party, especially with the overlapping perk buffs you can get in a group and more people to split enemy attention. From what I've personally seen, if you want to spend most of your time exploring solo, that'll be a fine choice, and the game makes it very easy to group up for events without any thought, and you'll always be able to form temporary groups with nearby players for more difficult challenges. Ultimately, if you want a single-player game, then Fallout 76 will often be reminding you that there are other players playing alongside you. But for the most part, you can keep to yourself if you prefer. How does VATS work? Now, multiplayer means no pausing time, so the old VATS system is out. New VATS is essentially an aimbot mode, which uses a percentage chance to hit based on your distance, weapon, mod, skills, and other factors. When you use VATS, your screen will lock on, you can still move around, and you fire with the trigger button in real time, with each shot costing AP. Honestly, it took some getting used to, but I think it's going to be pretty strong. It was great in closer ranges in PvP, or when I was surprised by an enemy. I'd activate VATS, wait a small moment for it to lock in, and then fire like mad to burn through my AP. There's a few new points of balance that I noticed around this system. The first one is that you can't seem to move your screen around while locked on. And there is a very small delay when you first lock on with VATS. Before you can actually hit a target, you'll notice the percentage starts at 0 and then it quickly ticks up. I think this is so that you can't spam VATS and take a shot instantly. And if your target runs out of sight, then you'll drop out of VATS. By default, VATS only targets the whole body of the enemy, but there is a perk to allow body part aiming, though I think this will take some practice to use in real time. You can also still use VATS to scout for enemies in your line of sight, which is particularly useful if they may be hidden amongst long grass and trees. Is Fallout 76 any good, and will it be successful? So the reception to the initial idea of Fallout 76 has been, I'd say, a bit of a mixed bag. Some fans of the series feel that they should remain single-player games, and they're concerned due to bad experiences with multiplayer survival games, for example. Based on what I've played, I think 76 is going to be really, really successful. Fallout 76 recognizes that the most fun parts of Fallout 4 for many people were exploring, crafting, and scavenging, and just enjoying the goofy world of Fallout. And then for the multiplayer side of things, it recognizes that while people like to say they enjoy hardcore PvP experiences, most people actually don't, and they just want to goof off with friends and get into the occasional slap fight. Fallout 76 doesn't pretend to be a hardcore survival game, nor does it pretend to be a deep story-driven CRPG. It's a fun, sandboxy Fallout game that's going to appeal to a lot of people. Look, I'm not saying that everyone will love it. Some people just aren't going to enjoy a multiplayer Bethesda game. But I think it's definitely going to be successful and fun for a lot of people, because it's a huge, vibrant Fallout world that you can explore with your friends, right? So while that's it for this video, I plan on taking a deeper look at many aspects of the game and showcasing more of my footage in upcoming videos. Lock onto that sub button in VATS and give it a quick pop, and you'll be able to catch that content when it comes out. Additionally, if any of your burning questions weren't answered in this video, then let me know in the comments below and I can follow up with them. That's it for now, I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.